All right, welcome back to Turnbull Garage. So today, finally, the day has come. We're going to get back on this little Subaru Sambar and see if we can get this thing running. Last video you saw, I got the motor pulled apart and everything, and there's been some work going on behind the scenes. So yeah, let's just have a quick look and see where we're at. All right, so what I got here is all the engine parts sitting here ready to reassemble. The block has been remachined. It's been bored over 50 over. That's a 0.5 millimeter over. It's been decked. It's been dipped, cleaned, and as well I've had all new frost plugs put in because this side of the motor was actually facing up when it's in the vehicle, and there was so much mud and everything on here holding moisture. These were pretty rusty, so I thought, you know what, for 40 bucks, they replaced all the frost plugs in the block. I've got new pistons, new piston rings over here, wrist pins, new circlips for the wrist pins, and again, all the parts over here laid out ready to assemble. The one thing I'm not going to be reusing is the head. To save some time, I do have a spare head that's machined, completely rebuilt and ready to go. So I'm going to throw it in, and then I'll rebuild this head at a later time. So like I say, I've got another video of one of these engines going together. So I'm not going to show any of the reassembly. I'm just maybe a couple things along the way if I find something interesting. But basically, I'm just going to put this together. If you're interested in looking at how to rebuild one of these engines, look at my my videos. I've got a whole series on rebuilding one of these engines. So yeah, let's get going. All right, I got the crankshaft installed, 2/1000ths of an inch clearance on all the mains, which is spot on where I want to be. And now with the connecting rods, I wanted to show you something here. I got the new pistons installed, but there's something you need to be aware of, and that is you got to make sure that the connecting rods are going to go back into the engine orientated the same direction. And normally how you do that is with the arrow on the piston pointing to number 1. So it's very important that the piston gets put onto the connecting rod the same way as the old one. And it's pretty easy, at least on my engine. I'm sure they're probably all the same, is there's a raised part in the casting here. It's got like an arrow or a 7 or something. But that is the same side that this arrow will point on. So if you put the piston on that way, you know that the connecting rod's going to go together, go orientated inside the engine correctly. One more thing is the cap. You got to make sure the cap goes on the same way. And if you look, see if you can see here. Yeah, you can see it right there. There's some writing on both sides. On the other side, there's no writing. So that's how you put it together correctly, is just make sure that the two halves with the writing are on the same side, and you're set. So there you go. I got all the pistons on the old connecting rods. The next thing I'm going to do is put the piston rings in the cylinder and check my end gap. Okay, I got the engine coming together nicely. Timing covers are cleaned up. The next thing I'm going to do is actually, I've got this piece here, the plate that goes between the engine and transmission. That's got to go on. But before I really get too crazy, I've got to start cleaning up these parts over here and that carburetor. I know there's one person out there that is really waiting for me to get on this carburetor. I think I might start on that today. Flywheel's got to get cleaned up. I've got to get my sandblast cabinet finished up so I can get these parts sandblasted. So yeah, maybe let's dig into this carburetor and see what we're up against. All right, it's time to tackle this carburetor. Like I say, I've got a couple of spare carburetors that are not complete. They're kind of complete, but they're missing some parts. I'm hoping that between 3 carburetors I can make one, because the body in this one I suspect is going to be quite corroded. Let me show you guys the inside. You can't even open the throttle, the butterfly on it. It's just, they're bad. It's a bad carburetor. So I've taken a picture of it where all the hoses are located. So I'm going to start to pull all that stuff off and yeah, start opening this thing up. All right, so I've got 3 of the screws out of the float bowl, and this one here is not wanting to come. So one of the tricks you can do, this will be a little bit, you gotta be a little careful, but take a cold chisel and hit it on an angle. There, and just hit it on an angle that way and crack that screw loose. I don't like to do it, but it's just not coming out. It's quite seized in there. I do have, like I say, a spare carburetor with some of those screws I can use, so
I'll sacrifice that one. But yeah, it's coming apart. All the hoses are off. I broke something. I'm hoping I've got another one because these things are probably hard to find. But one of these little valve, or I'm not too sure exactly what it is, but I snapped one of these hose inlets off when I was trying to loosen this off. It was very tight, but kind of pissed off about that. But what do you do? All right, let's carry on. I ended up pulling out both of these solenoids. It's an anti-dieseling solenoid. I'm not sure what the other one is. Bit of a trick with these. You want to pull the wires out of the connector. There's a little clip that you can sort of bend and then the wires will pull out. And actually when you buy these things, they come like this with the connector on it, and you'll actually just stick them into the plastic connector. So those are off. I also removed this little linkage here because to remove the float bowl, you're gonna, I believe, actually I'm not sure now. There's a linkage for an accelerator pump in here. I think the accelerator pump comes with, I'm pretty sure it comes with the float bowl. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this float bowl off right now. Let's see what's inside. Oof. That is, yeah, there's the accelerator pump. So you have to have that that pin that's on here disconnected from right here on your accelerator pump, which it still moves, but look inside that float bowl. See if you guys can get a good view in there. That is nasty with a capital N. This is all rusty. Yeah. You know, I'm sure it's salvageable, but boy, she doesn't look good. So anyway, that's that off. I'll take the floats off. Actually, let's do that right now. If I can even see it. Little pin here for the hinge. Should just press out. There we go. Pull the pin, pull the float, pull the seat. All right, there's that little bracket for the float. Where's my 10mm? Now you can buy these assemblies. There is a little screen on here, a little filter for the seat assembly. There's also a little copper washer goes underneath it. Now there's a seat in the side of here. See if this will come out nicely. Oh, there we go. Take that seat out, and then there should be another seat down inside there. Get that out later. Okay, the next thing I think I'm going to do is pop this top cap off and look inside here. So I've had this stuff soaking with penetrating oil. Hopefully it comes off pretty good. That's one. That's two. That's three. That's four. Oh, that's five. Perfect. They're really tight. What I'm using is just a little mini ratchet. It gives you just a little bit more leverage than you can with a screwdriver, and I'm using the slot. These screws are slot as well as a Phillips, and the Phillips, if you try to use it, typically you're going to strip the head of the screw. So your best bet is to actually just use a slot to get them loosened up. Yeah, this should come off. I think it's rusted on there. Let's give it a couple of, let's get a plastic mallet here, give it a couple of taps. Whoa, geez. And so once you get this top piece off, then you can get to these screws here are for your butterfly. Actually, these are for, these are not for your butterfly. This is actually a vacuum actuated. It's weird. It changes the venturi, But man, this is so corroded. It's gonna be very, very difficult to get this stuff out. I'll spray some more penetrating oil on this stuff. Let that soak in. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is start getting all this periphery stuff off of here because it's gonna start getting in my way. I probably should have started with that, but I was curious how bad it looked inside. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording here and get all this stuff removed and get down to the bare bones here. I got quite a mess here, so I've got it pretty much taken apart, except for all the shafts. They're seized in there, so that's the next thing I'll work on. But before I do that, I'm gonna get all this area cleaned up, organized. There's dirt, there's rusty parts, so I'm gonna spend some time getting this all organized, get my tools put away. This is a little more how I like it, a little more organized. I've taken I think it's about my 4th carburetor I've taken apart. Maybe not quite to this full extent, but one thing, this is the first time I've had one with this little plastic piece that goes in the very top of the carburetor. I don't know what it does. It's just this, yeah, I've never seen that before. That's just a little O-ring in there. But anyway, the next challenge I'm gonna have is trying to get these butterflies out of here and the shafts going through. So that's the next thing I'm gonna do, is start trying to bang those out. All right, I was able to get the shafts out of there, get the butterflies out. That said, they're here. This is a fuel mixture adjusting screw, and it is a very fine thread, and it is seized in there. I cannot get it out. I got it to move a bit, but I'm pretty sure the threads are all galled up now. And considering the corrosion and everything in here, I think this pretty much is toast. Same with that. The jet that I tried to get, there's another jet. Let's see if you guys can see. I get some light here. There's another jet you can remove out of there. The screw head just sheared right off, so it's not going to be able to come out. So I do have this spare carburetor here. It's missing internals, like the floats and stuff like that. So I think I'll be able to salvage the floats from here and put them into here. I know some of you might like to see how these get rebuilt. I don't think you're gonna see that. I mean, you can see what's involved in taking it apart. There's a lot of stuff on these things. And you know, if you're not comfortable with the carburetor, you might want to stay away, but you know, I'll tackle anything. Whether it's successful at the end, well, this one's no fault of my own. It's just being underwater for 1.5 years, it's toast. So I'm going to open up this carburetor and see what I need and rob what I need off of these parts. Okay, so getting this old carburetor I had sort of up and running. I got this all cleaned up. I've also, when I ordered the parts, I knew I was going to be doing this, so I ordered a gasket set. So I put a new gasket under there. There'll be another one that goes in here. But one thing that you need to know, the accelerator pump goes into here, and in this hole here is a metal, it's just a weight. It's an aluminum weight, and there's also a ball bearing in there. Now this carburetor that my old one that I had, it didn't have that. It's missing, so I salvaged that pin out of this, but somewhere down there should be a ball bearing. And what that does is when the accelerator pumps fuel up, the weight, it acts like a check valve basically. So, and I gotta, hopefully I can find, hopefully the ball in there is not bad shape. I have another carburetor that maybe I can get the part, but I'm also gonna clean up this float bowl, get this all cleaned up, but it's coming together here. All right, I gave this a couple taps with a hammer, and right there is the ball bearing. A bit dirty, I think it's, yeah, it's got a bit of corrosion. Bit of rust on there. So I think what I'll do is just measure that and just go get another ball bearing. They're easy to come by. Bicycle shops are typically the place where you'll go get one. All right, here's the float bowl. The ball bearing actually did clean up fine. I just rubbed it on some paper towel. The rust was surface rusted. It's got no, you know, it's in great shape. So anyway, it's a 4mm ball, in case you're wondering. So you put the ball in there, you put your little weight on top, make sure your gasket's in place, and then you're gonna take your carburetor and place it over top. Where's that accelerator? Right there. So you got to put the carburetor on top, because if you turn this over, you're going to, obviously the ball and the weight's going to fall out. So also, a new O-ring on this jet right here, and that'll seal inside the float bowl. That should just go right on there. There we go, just like that. Drop our 4 screws in. Where's my screwdriver? Okay, then what I'm going to do is take my little ratchet. I'm just going to give these just a little extra snug up here. Again, I'm using a slot, not the Phillips, because I don't want to strip them. That's got the bottom of the carburetor on. Now what I'll do is just hook up my linkage here. I'm going to spin this around. There we go. And then this screw goes in right here. Now we'll just check to make sure that, make sure you can see that. This arm right here, when you open the throttle, you'll see it push that pin up. It doesn't move much, but it just pumps a little extra fuel. This piece here is vacuum actuated. This little vacuum thing here. And the more throttle you give it, it'll open up this piece here. Let me see if I can try and show this. It's a bizarre thing. If you've never opened one of these carburetors up and looked inside. So if you look down there with the thing wide open throttle, this little flap will open and close and kind of changes the Venturi effect. Kind of strange. So anyway, next thing I do is get the top part of this carburetor mounted onto here. All right, so this is the anti-dieseling valve, if you will, that came out of the solenoid on the flooded engine. It's nasty. It's all rusty. And this is the one that came out of my spare one. It's actually, I cleaned up a little bit, but it's very nice. So I'm not going to be using that. I'll be using this and drop it inside. It flows, moves very nicely, and I'll bolt that into place. All right, the next part I'm going to have to deal with is this next. I'm not sure what this is. It's another solenoid, but the little valve in this one is really bad. So I'm actually going to chuck this up in my lathe and just clean it up with some 600 grit paper. Much better. So there's the carburetor back together. The wires for the solenoids are all hooked up again here. I just got to get a clip or a little tie wrap on here, but they're back into the electrical connector. And yeah, it's all put together. So I have a lot of parts left over. If there's anybody if any of you might want to have any of these parts, let me know, because they're destined for the scrap bin. The only ones that I'm probably going to hold on to will be the vacuum actuators, because they are, you know, they can fail and they're not cheap. So, but anything else, I mean, really, I don't think there's any value of any of this stuff. But if there's anything you guys want, put your messages in the comments below. Turns out I did have the gaskets for that little spacer. They were in amongst my stuff. It was just buried under some things. Look, we got the cover on the engine, flywheels on. The crank pulley's on. I painted it up, made it nice. redid the white marks for the timing marks, oil filters on, and the oil pressure sending unit, that is from a Subaru Justy. Bought that off Rock Auto, super cheap, fits right in there. It's also got the screw top to allow the wire connector on. That's going to do it for this video. I'm going to wrap it up here. Got the carburetor basically put all back together. Hopefully it works. We'll know once we get the engine back into the truck, all the hoses and wires hooked up, and see if it fires up. The engine itself has come together quite nicely. It's looking good, and just a few more parts and pieces to put on, and that'll be finished. So we're getting pretty close to getting this little engine back in the truck and firing it up. I did want to pass on an important thing about rebuilding these engines. One of my subscribers reached out to me, and we've been talking back and forth. He had a very unfortunate and could be costly problem. He put the engine together. In the assembly process, the clearance between the rod bearings and the main bearings and the crank were all within spec. They were perfect. Put the engine together, fired it up, it ran great for a little while, and then started making a terrible noise. He sent me a video clip actually of it, and I said, it sounds like a rod bearing. You might want to pop the pan off, have a look. Sure enough, it was number 3 and 4 rod bearings were completely wiped out, and they looked terrible. Number 1 and 2 weren't too good either. It looks like the crankshaft, the oil holes that run through the crank to lubricate everything were plugged up. So if you are doing an engine rebuild, you might want to blow some air into that crank and make sure all those little galleries are free from any obstruction, because that's a lot of work to put that all together just to find out that it's broken again. So live and learn for that individual that ran into that problem, and hopefully you don't have that. So thanks a lot for watching. Think about subscribing. Thoughts and comments down below, and have yourself a great day.